Hi, I'm Matthew Clifton, and on behalf of polypusher.net, I'd like to welcome you to the beginner's surfacing and lighting tutorial set. In this set we'll be working on lighting and surfacing an architectural bathroom type scene. There'll be a daylight shot, and in a future tutorial we'll do a nighttime shot as well, but that'll only be a short add-on probably for this tutorial set. This is a quick scene I made. I saw a similar scene on one of the sort of gallery type forums where an artist did a bathroom scene similar to this with wooden panels and concrete floors, and that was rendered in V-Ray. So I thought that'd be a good. It was a really good scene with really good lighting. So I thought we'd try and emulate something similar within Modo and see how the Modo renderer handles this. So a quick overview of the scene so far. All the models are done for you. There's the standard direction light that comes in with the actual default scene and a default camera. Everything is standard. The only thing that's probably changed could be the focal length. Also, all the models have the materials already added to them, but every material is just a standard default material with 80% diffuse, 20% specular, and no bump. Roughness of 40%. They're all exactly, when you select the polygons and hit the M key and give it a name, that's just the default texture, so they're all the same. Environment is all the same. These colours may vary slightly from what you're seeing. You should still see full colour gradient, but these get remembered from a previous scene I've done, so they might be slightly different variations of those colours, but it's still the same. But we'll be looking at a physical based sun using the directional light for rendering this. Most stuff we're going to be doing is going to be over in the render tab, so we'll hop straight over there now. As you can see, there's not much to look at. The camera's been set up already looking down the bathroom. There's nothing in there at the moment. There's no light coming into the scene at all. So we're just going to do a little bit of quick alterations to this just to get us. This is on shaded, the camera view up here, which is fine. If you've got items selected and you select an item in there in the shader tree, I will have to just apologise because we haven't got a lot of real estate with the screen capture. And then on the filter, if you select filter on selection, then whatever object you select, it will just streamline this big list of shader nodes just to the ones which are sort of relevant to the item you're looking at. i.e. the bathtub is made up of 3 materials: the feet, the actual bathtub itself, and then there's a chrome plug inside. So make sure you've got filter on selection turned on. In this scene there, as we've got a ceiling, which you can't really see much in here, I'm going to just change solid just over to wireframe for now, just so we can get a bit more of an idea of what's going on. And also, if you hover over this bottom window here, make sure you've got the tri-pane open. Hit the O key for the options, and make sure you've got show light and show cameras turned on, and show locators and show texture locators turned off. It'll just help us. If you're used to editing materials and textures using the locators, by all means leave them on. And also in this camera view up here, hit the O key and do the same. Make sure the show lights are turned on, the show cameras is turned on, and locators are disabled. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into this now. In the shader tree, the way it works is, if you can imagine starting at the bottom, and this is the actual output, the word's output. So if you imagine starting at the bottom, it'll Modo, when it renders, it will sort the camera out, it will sort the lighting out, and it will gradually work its way up through all these materials to the shader, then output to the screen. So anything which is at the top gets done last. So the way the shader works here, the base shader, is it handles all the materials and then it outputs it with a shader. If you need to put a new shader in to say one material, you can always drag that material above the shader and then create a new shader within that material, which you'll see me do in a moment for this glass. At the moment we have a directional light outside, so I'm just going to click on that, and these, like I said, these are standard settings. Let's go over to the directional light tab there. and you'll see. At the moment, you might not be able to see all these settings. They might be cut by the screen capture, but you should be able to see down as far as the physical sun, so which is there, and that's, to be honest, that's all you really need to see. I'll be explaining what I'm doing within these as I go. The actual light, the brightness, which is at 3 at the moment, I'm going to just up that slightly to 3.2. Shadows is ray trace, that's fine. The spread angle, that's just how crisp the shadows are on the ground. So when the light's projected through a window, when the shadows fall, you can get a nice softening effect. So we're gonna want to change that slightly. You don't need much on this spread angle, so I'm going to put that to 0.5. I'm going to up the sample slightly, but this is just for me doing this. If you want to keep render times down, you can leave these at simple shading and 64, and then when we come to the final render, one of the last latter parts of the tutorial set, you can then always up these values then. Well, so we're going to turn on physical sun. It's just a case of checking the box, and this is going to be a morning type shot, so I'm just going to set these times and dates for morning, but for your own scene you can have a play around in the 720 if you want. So I'm going to put it at 8:25 in the morning, and if we zoom out, you'll see the sun coming this way. This is my window here, so the light's going to be shining through the window at a slight angle. I'm also going to make it more of a summer sort of day, so I'm going to add this to August the 1st, and just a year in there, 2010. And once you've got that set and you've got the angle as you want it, if it happens to be on one of your scenes that the orientation of the scene is different to this, you can actually, rather than trying to tweak dates and years to get this to shine through your window, if you go down past physical sun at the bottom there, this is probably going to be off your screen here, that says north offset from -C, and there'll be an angle in there, and basically you can just use those sliders left and right and just change angle, and that will just drag around the north like so. So I'm just going to put that back because that was coming through the window nicely for what we need. Okay, so at the moment there's no light in the scene here. This is the actual render, the final render image, or like a preview pane showing you what the final render will be. Obviously there's no light here, and that's because the glazing in the window, so I find glazing, which is like a square pane, which is going to be the glass. At the moment it's got no transparency, so it's blocking any light that's coming in, but I'm not going to worry about dealing with any of the transparent materials at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the glazing out of the equation. So either way you can just disable it, which is probably the easiest way, or if you go over the shader tree, like I said before, if you look at the shader, this is the base shader which handles all the rendering. There's all these options, the visibility options down here, whether it's visible to camera, receiving shadows, etc. So basically we want to turn all these off, but if we turn them all off here, that'll turn them all off for everything below. So the way we can get around is what we'll do, we'll drag this material above the base shader, and then within the material we'll just give it a new shader. So now, yes, again, it's blocking all the light. And I'll just turn all these off. So that's took the glazing out of the equation for now, but we've still managed to actually leave the actual item turned on. Another good thing to notice about the shader tree is if you want to do like a clay bake or clay render, like everything in grey, like an ambient occlusion type look and feel, you don't need to change any of the materials in the objects. If I just turn off the filter on selection to see them all, You don't need to change any colors or any settings, any of these. As you get these set like the marble you want and the chrome you want, you can just leave them all there. Like I said, as long as you add a new material above any of these, it will then just overwrite what's below. So in here, I'm just going to add a new material. I'm just going to call this clay material. I'm going to leave everything as standard, and that'll overwrite any sort of materials below. So I'm just going to turn that off for now. Then if we need to come back and do a clay bake at any time, we can just flick that filter switch, and it's good to go. So if we need to start adding some additional light, because even though we've got the light now coming through the window, it's illuminating this bit of floor and this piece of wall, but it's not really illuminating the scene at all. And we've also got this gradient. This is the environment coming through, which we want to change. So we're going to go over to the environment, and at the moment these are the 4 colors you're seeing there. So I'm going to change this to physically based daylight. And now that'll change these based on the times and the dates we put in earlier for the directional light. So I'm just going to go over to the directional light quickly. Make sure physical sun is turned on. And back in the environment, the physical based daylight, you can actually pick a light for the sun. So we're going to use our directional light for that. I'm just going to rename this sunlight. Okay, we want to add some more light into this scene. So we're going to basically do what photographers do and filmographers, add some fake lighting. Well, it's not actually physically correct. It's a good way of lighting a scene and giving you more control. And like I say, photographers do it using backlights and indirect lights and mirrors and diffuse sheets, etc. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over to we're going to go to item. This is in the menu at the top of the screen there. So you won't be able to see this, it'll be straight off camera. But if you go up to item and go down, it's create light, and then create area light. And I'll drop an area light into the middle of the screen. Straight away you can see there's more light coming in here. There it is there. So we're going to hit the W key to move. And basically what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to move it behind the camera. So I'm going to go over to a top view. I'm going to rotate it around so it's facing into the scene. I'm going to move it back against the back wall. Then with a side view, I'm going to just going to scale it up so it fits the scene width. And the scene height. So you'll see straight away it's adding a lot more light into the scene. Okay, let's get the camera back moved there. This light, spacebar to drop the tool. This area light there, I'm going to call this indirect back light, and I don't want to have it as bright as that, so I'm going to turn down the radiance from 3 just to 0.8. So it's just going to add a bit of fill. I'm going to turn off. Actually, I'm going to leave them on just to keep the render time up. If we get a lot of noise towards the end, we can always up samples. So we're going to leave samples on at 64 and simple shading. And the light material, I'm going to change it for white because nothing in the real world is white. And I'm going to make it a more of a yellowy, a nice warm yellow color to match the sort of environment light. So I'm just going to, not too much color, and I'll just make it a bit more so it isn't quite so white. So that's that one done there. Also for the window, I'm going to add some more light. So I'm going to send again up to Item, Create Light, Area Light. This time, I'm going to drag it outside the scene and make it the same size as the window opening, like that. Go to a top view, E key to rotate it round 90 degrees. Just move it into place. And let's scale it up so it's the same size as the window. And we'll move it as close as we can. And you'll see now it's adding more light into the scene. I'm going to leave the radiance as default 3. I'm going to turn off simple shading this time and just bump the samples up to 128. This one I'm going to call window light, and in the light material, yet again I'm going to give it a nice warm yellow, like so. With the 3 lights done, I'm just going to select them all, holding down the Shift key and hit Control G to make a group. I'm just going to call this lights. That just gives us an easy way now with groups just to turn everything off and on. So now we're getting there. We've got more light into the scene. Next we're going to deal with global illumination, and we'll get dramatic additional light with extra additional bounces. So we're going to go over to the render tab. The frame width and height here is how big the final image is going to be. So you can see that I've got it set for 1280, 720. We'll go down to settings. Anti-aliasing, 8 samples per pixel. I'm going to up this to 16, and I'm going to turn Gaussian to box. And box is the most precise. Everything else is just standard. Global illumination. I'm going to up the ambient intensity just very slightly. You don't normally touch ambient intensity, but if you've got global illumination on indirect illumination, you can, without it washing out the scene too much. So I'm just going to boost it up a slight bit. Ambient color I'm going to leave the same. Indirect illumination I'm now going to turn on. .64 indirect rays is fine for this. I'm going to add a couple more bounces. This is going to dramatically add to rendering time. So when you're doing tests at the early starts, you can always bring this up and down. And how far the rays bounce. Well, the scene itself is about 26 foot in length, so I'm going to put this to 20, just to 20 feet. I'm going to turn on the irradiance cache. I'm going to bump this up to 256, and I'm going to bring these down to 2.5, 6, and 1. I won't go into really what these settings do. Look at the manual, it's the best way. All I'll say is the bigger the numbers, the poorer the quality, the lower numbers, the better the quality. So I'm just bringing them down slightly. And now you'll see the scene is starting to take shape with quite a nice lighting setup. We're not too worried too much about noise at this time. We're always going to have some noise, so we've got to admit that, and be truthful with ourselves and say we are going to have noise and we can't get away with it. But as more and more items are actually surfaced, the noise does tend to disappear. We'll review this and noise levels, etc., when we get nearer to the end, and then we can tweak some settings accordingly. But at the moment, all we're after is a good overall lighting setup. We don't want too many, or we don't want any burnt out, blown out areas. But having said that, don't make the lighting too dark, because when you're adding, at the moment, every material is basically white or a derivative of white, so the bounce light is quite bright. But as we start adding materials and such which are darker, the scene will come down. So we want it quite bright. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the final color output. I'm going to turn the gamma up to 1.6. This will just give us more contrast and more to play around with when we get to post-processing at the end. So I'm happy with that. As you can see from the scene now, it's quite well lit. There's obviously, you can see the light coming in and it diffusing and bouncing around the scene. So we want to aim for something like this at this stage, and then when we come back in the next part, we'll start the surfacing now, and we'll basically go through the list one item at a time, not necessarily in this order. We'll start with the easier ones first, and we'll gradually surface all the objects, and then we'll work on render outputs towards the end. So thanks for watching the first part and joining this tutorial set, and I'll see you in part 2 where we'll start the surfacing. So bye for now.